Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we'll bring you day 299 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As usual, with Olexiy Arestovych, advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel, and Mark Feygin, Russian opposition politician. In today's stream, they discuss situation on the front, battle is raging near Bakhmut and Soledar, Alexei's consideration that Russia is planning to shut down the lights in Kiev, and how possible is it? It's day 299 and not a single HIMARS was hit. Russia is trying to balance Chinese presence in Belarusian economy. United Nations General Secretary Guterres considers the increase of permanent Security Council members. And what does it mean for Russia? They also discussed a new law in Ukraine that increases criminal responsibility for failing to comply with military orders in Ukrainian defense forces. Ukraine is changing its military paradigm, inherited from the Soviet Union, and building a new command chain. And European countries agreed on a new price ceiling for the Russian gas, starting on the 15th of February 2023. Also, according to the recent Russian polls, a third of polled already have acquaintances who have died on the front. This is day 299. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feigin Live. It is Monday, December 19th. Time is 5 minutes past 10 in Kiev and 5 minutes past 11 in Moscow. And we're doing the usual stream with Olexiy Arestovych. Today it is... let me check, what day is it today? I'm getting lost here. But Olexiy, by the way, glad to see you. Likewise, Mark. We have day 299 today, and we have 140,000 who have joined us live. Over 30,000 clicked the like button. The usual ask, please continue sharing links to that stream in your social media and groups. Click that like button, that definitely helps. That's your little input that you can do to win this information side of war. And keep our streams in the trending top in YouTube. Of course, subscribe to our channels, to Feigin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you have not done yet, if you are listening or watching that in English. We hope we'll avoid issues with sound today. There were a lot of comments in the chat, but I ask you to please understand that we are traveling, and in order to continue doing streams, we have to accommodate in rather unfit situations for recording, for quiet space to record the stream. So please be patient with us. And yesterday was the last day of soccer championship, so I think that attention is back onto news and events of the day. I hope people enjoyed watching the finale. To a degree they can during the war, but okay, let's go to the map. Olexiy, can you tell us more about what's going on the front? The main events are happening near Bakhmut today, and our defense ministry has not commented on that yet, but Russian sources already claim that there was a counteroffensive in Bakhmut, and Ukraine troops kicked Russian military outside of Bakhmut. And some of them are screaming that it's so bad, they've been fighting so long for the outskirts of the city to be present there, and then the enemy just came and kicked everybody out, and actually kicked out further away from the city, so the line moved to the east. It will be month 4 soon that they've been trying to actively storm Bakhmut with the best sources they have. That Wagner, who said to Russian army, will show you how to take cities. And this is an intermediary result. They just got kicked out of the outskirts. And it's not even counting, they haven't even counted yet the numbers of people they have lost there. There are thousands of their corpses littering the fields around the city, and it's not only inmates, there are also Russian Guard, there are some cadre military, there are some airborne detachments. As our troops say, now these polite green men are forever polite. So we'll see what and how it will conclude near Bakhmut, but I suspect they're facing a very bitter disappointment at the end of the story. In other areas, it's about the same. That line from Svatova to Kremenaya, the fights in the north, the fights are still going. Then everything south of Bakhmut, all the way down to Marinka, a lot of smaller scale fighting. Zaporozhye is relatively quiet. There are small tactical actions. Who finds who and drops a small charge from the UAV on their heads, or perhaps artillery catches some targets. And in Kherson, they're attempting to shoot us on the right bank, and we are retaliating at them on the left side, and we are more accurate. We have destroyed several important targets in the last couple of days. Also, we hit some good targets in Lugansk region up north. They tried to attack. They actually sent about 30 Shahed drones to Kiev, except every one of them except 5 were shot down. 5 reached their targets, didn't do much damage, caused some outages in parts of town. Of course, Kharkov, Nikolaev, Nikopol, of course, Kryvyi Rog and Kiev, these cities are pretty much getting into the daily news with the news of being hit by different missiles. And I do have a feeling, again, this is not information, this is my gut feeling, that Russian leadership figured if they cannot take the lights out in the entirety of Ukraine, they are trying to shut down the lights in Kiev. And I don't think that's possible for them. They'll just discover that they're incapable even of doing that. But yeah, we'll live and see. Okay, so I got strange message in my video, Olexiy, saying that there are 2 HIMARS being destroyed. It's a little difficult to say on that video what exactly was that before it was destroyed. And it's hard to tell. They're not telling what did they use to hit it. So please, any comments? Have any HIMARS vehicles suffer damage? Not a single one, Mark. Not a single one got damaged. And I have a question back. What did they use? What did they claim they used against HIMARS? Well, they're not telling. It's not a clear video. Exactly. And my question stems from the fact that they're shooting from 10, 20 kilometers away from the front line. What intel do you need to have in order to trace the vehicle that moves late at night or early in the morning? It doesn't use open roads. It uses secondary, better concealed roads, quickly deploys in position, 2 minutes for shooting, and packs and goes. So I don't know what they could use to even attack it if they could trace it. Well, yeah, that's what they sent. I mean, as I said, inconclusive. I think it's fairy tales, it's myths and legends. I don't see how could they've done it, and according to the data I have, not a single HIMARS was damaged. So you think that is not possible? Mark, everything is possible at war. Even the mighty HIMARS can get destroyed, but the thing is, they need to destroy one first before they brag about it. I would say they have not only not destroyed one, but they haven't even seen one. Well, see, Olexiy, I understand this is probably a false statement on their side, but we're not hiding these things. That's our concept. We discuss and ask questions. We look under stones. Okay, so let's continue rolling. Today, Putin came to Minsk with a visit. He was, what seems like in official places, he was seen together with Lukashenko, even on a press conference, some staged. There were some negotiations conducted, according to the media, and many people are screaming at us saying, why are we dedicating so much time to these events, to his visits? Um, thing is, he would not have gone to Minsk without significant reason. And we have discussed different angles of what could it mean, and we don't know yet what was agreed about. In your opinion, as much as we can judge, what any ideas changed? Why did he visit? I talked about that before, and of course, the main topic is precluding Belarus from joining the war and relations between Russia, Belarus, China, and collective West. Lukashenko is doing everything to rebalance the influence of Russia through China and in some parts through the West. That concerns Putin because he considers Belarus to be somewhat of his duchy. And today he was probably explained once again in Minsk that for every lord there is a higher lord. And basically, that Belarus doesn't like Russia to be shooting anything in Ukraine from the territory of Belarus, only if they really, really, really want to. Belarus army is not going to partake in war, and we can perhaps give you some 200,000 tons of shells or ammo or something from the warehouses. So you think they were not talking too actively about Belarus participation? Well, I don't think Putin was trying to lose his face once again. You remember that old military thing where you only give orders that will be executed, unexecutable orders are not given. And imagine Putin comes there and says, "We need you to do something," or imagine you come to somebody and say, "Ask for something. I need really something that you have," and the person says, "No, I won't give it to you." Okay, so he travels around, walks, comes back, and says, "Can you give that to me, maybe?" And get another answer, no. And then what? You walk around and come back later and repeat that again. What will happen to your reputation? What will happen to your authority and weight if you continue doing these actions? So, in this, from this angle, I don't think that's the main subject. But what they could discuss, of course, is reinforcement, additional ammo, and they would likely be discussing Chinese presence in the picture. And again, Russia, if smart, they wouldn't be discussing direct influence of China in Belarus economy, but they would perhaps ask to integrate those companies that are integrating stronger with China, Chinese suppliers, to integrate them with Russian counterparts instead. And perhaps presence of different branches of economy within each other countries. So something like that. That's my suspicion. But what's the reason then to bring Shoigu and all that other dandruff with you? Well, Russian image is based on the whole group and impression of might, so they always come, they never come single personally. And of course, he doesn't want to count the beans, and if he wants to discuss things about stuff on the warehouse, how much is available, Putin brings up Shoigu to stand up and counter how much and count how much Belarus has. For example, you have that many shells. Can you give us 5? Then Belarus leader brings up his specialist, and the specialist talks back and says, "Well, we have half of what you said we have. So how much can you give us? Can you give us 5? No, I can give you 3." So that's the usual art of negotiations, and that's likely what's going on there behind the doors. Okay, we have about 300,000 people watching us, and 77,000 click the like button. Thank you so much for sticking with us on Monday or Tuesday if you are watching that in English. And thank you for sharing links in your social media and clicking likes. General Secretary of United Nations Gutierrez is saying that he is seriously considering the increase of members of Security Council of the United Nations. That's an old good story. I think it's as old as myself. I think they are considering Germany, Japan, and India, and a couple other countries. There are three very different formats, right? There is Security Council, there is G20, and G7. After the Second World War, the situation changed, and those countries which should have been included in the Security Council, some of them already are present in G7, definitely are in G20. So these countries are raising voices and saying, why is that group of five countries running United Nations Security Council? And who is representing Asia? Just China? And okay, and what about South America, the whole continent? Or is Africa presented? Or why Europe is presented with France and not with Germany, which is a core engine of European economy and is a founding member of European Union. And one can even say that it's a German project functionally. So let's discuss, and these voices have been heard for a while. Let's discuss the Security Council making, and that's where the soft and deadly animal is crawling up towards Russia, because the moment the Security Council grows in numbers, they may ask the next question: what is the veto? This is some sort of anachronism. Let's change our voting to simple majority. And that would be the end of it. And without even canceling the whole veto thing, they just devaluate it. And there could be a story of what's happening in the European Union and NATO now. Some Hungaries and Maltas can express that they're dissatisfied with the other members, but then all of a sudden members find another way around these single opponents. The thing is, I think what's happening in the West, they started to understand on the background of this war a very important thing, that the consensus of majority is paralyzing their ability to realize important decisions. And they more and more are leaning towards voting majority versus minority, so just a simple majority. Because the diversity of interests, diversity of history, connections, and many other factors of the countries comprising big agglomerations like European Union, United Nations, they make it very difficult or nearly impossible to achieve certain resolution on key questions. One of the good examples was the behavior of Turkey when Sweden and Finland were discussed about joining NATO. And Russia and China, for example, are opposing that, Russia mostly, but with Russia, then Turkey and Hungary have very separate relations. Imagine if you and me ally against somebody, and then I go and set up my other special relations with that somebody, and then the question comes, then why are you with me, right? Why? Make your mind. You're either against that or you're with them. But in every serious organization, you cannot just kick somebody out. So they're discussing ways how to avoid that, how to resolve matters and avoid losing members. So it's sometimes easier to get than to quit these orgs. And the others are finding ways to how circumvent these stern positions, stern opponents to certain decisions. And by the way, I'm not great in Turkey. Turkey is kudos to them for minding their national interests. But on the European Union stage, these things look like these countries are stating their interests higher than the interest of the European Union members. And at the same time, while joining the EU, they did sign and give up certain rights, and they considered things that the rights of members of the European Union are to prevail over individual rights of the country. And that's what's happening now. They're bringing it up to Hungary and saying, well, look, you joined us and you signed these documents, these declarations, and now what's happening? Why are you putting these interests above the interests of the community? So this is a complex process that's going there, and it is a practical trend that keeps growing, and it is finally entrenching itself in NATO corridors as well. So NATO is slowly trending towards increasing the number of Security Council and perhaps getting rid of veto. Because, by the way, Russia is violating the rules of the United Nations 100 times a day, and keeping such a member as a key founding member with a veto right, not a single org in the world, from the club of cross stitching to any automobile organization, would not allow, or neither any terrorist group, Tigers of Liberation of some town, will not allow a member who violates daily, many times a day, all founding documents and other decrees of that organization. The absence of levers to get rid of it, to resolve that with the United Nations, doesn't allow them to be fast. Although League of Nations made their decision when Soviet Union invaded Finland, but United Nations can go there. There is even a mechanism written out. The overall voting can overcome the veto of the founding member. I'm not too much of a specialist in the United Nations intricacies, but there are mechanisms that allow, with agreement of majority of Assembly and majority of Security Council, can prosecute countries who continue violating resolutions. And there are two members like that, Russia and China, who continue these violations. So I would say the ice is moving, the ice is cracking, even in the United Nations, that would be the last one to come in motion in relation to any big trouble. Even they are starting to move now, and they're looking for solutions to remedy the situation where one of their members, one of their key members, is posing a survival question and threatening everybody in the world for the last 10 months. This is not good. And violently insane should not have a capacity to destroy other people, and probably should not have access to nuclear weapons or to voting in the international bodies as a founding member. In these cases, they should be wrapped in proper clothing that will preclude them from doing damage to themselves and others, spoon-fed, and perhaps retired to writing memoirs about how they lived their lives. Okay, let's go further. We've been live for 22 minutes. We have enough time. Small information here. They're writing in Telegram channels that Putin have not left Minsk yet, and perhaps he is staying in Ostroshytsky Gorodok, near residence of, with one of the residences of Lukashenko. So there are also people commenting on the criminal prosecution in Ukraine with military forces. Let's touch upon this subject. How actual is it? How important is it? 10 months into this war, such a normative act, how important it is to increase punishment for violation of the orders? This is a very big and painful question. It is big because it's a clash of two, if not civilizational, at least cultural paradigms. Ukraine is a country with big territory, and a country where citizens want to have freedom and to be able to express their freedom, and that goes to a degree of anarchy sometimes, just national feature. And army, in the meantime, is a very hierarchical organization with heavy reliance on discipline and fulfilling orders. And here we have a character of national military school that started to bud in the last 8 months with the character of all military in general, which we inherited. What is the core of this conflict? Right now, we have about 1 million people serving in our military. They're all very different. There are, for example, sergeants who are big, able lawyers. There are politicians who are infantrymen. There are businessmen, successful businessmen who are specialists. And there are even, very talented taxi drivers who are fighting since 2014. So, first of all, a lot of these people know their worth. They know what they are doing there. They're very active in hunting the enemy. While commanders, as you understand, are very different. Just like with every other layer of society, there are genius sprinkled around the average and the dumb, like in any society. Army is a mirror of that. But the war is very ruthless. The worst that you can find in war is that a person who can be 10 times dumber than you are, he can send you, but he's your superior, and he can send you to die, and you will go and die, even though you understand that the tasks he is posing are dumb or perhaps should be solved differently. And since war is a horrible grinder that kills a lot of lives, there are a lot of conflicts in the army, because there are inexperienced commanders in the army who use the tools and means given to them wrongly, or at least not effectively. And then there are also lower ranks who are much more effective and creative in fighting. And there are always, like in any army of the world, commanders of all different levels and lower ranks of all different specialties. They do have a lot of beef with each other. They always grind it out. And by the way, officers corps also has a lot of issues between themselves, because, by the way, Ukrainian military is a typical post-Soviet army, which has different generations of officers in there. And younger commanders very often do not understand their superiors. Those in turn do not understand the higher level up, and then the colonels do not always get the generals, because many of them are representing different times, different generations, different schools of military and societal schools. So it is a very complex mix of lives and relations, which also has a very significant element of deaths, and hundreds of deaths, and deaths of friends and families. And so you're coming back from a fight which you think was the wrong fight, shouldn't have been done, but your commanding officer is an asshole, as you think, and he sent you to do that. And he continues doing that over and over again, yet you're losing your best friends. And he basically commander pushes back, saying, if I'll be considering all these things that you bring up, I'll be tired. I will not be able to fulfill my main duty. So here's our main duty. Take this position, and we need to go and continue trying to take it. And both sides, they have rights and wrongs in this situation. So to abbreviate that is a positive development. I think responsibility needs to be increased. War is a heavy trial for any person, and among millions of mobilized, there are different ones. There are ones who are writing posts in the media saying that evil officers left us without food, without command, we're dying there, dear President, society, please come and help us. Some of them may be right when they're doing it, even though it shouldn't be during the times of war, but I understand there are situations when commanders indeed abandoned their troops. Seldom ever happens, but it does happen. And there are other situations when people just start panicking. I actually did, as representing our society with the voice of our society in the office of the president, I did deep dive in many of these cases, and I actually called those who were involved in different incidents. And I would say, in my experience, panicking situations are overwhelming, the ones when the post is legit, when people are screaming for legit reasons. But there are also other cases when troops, somebody just got drunk, or somebody refused to go fulfill the order, refused to go somewhere and stay posted there. There are a lot of people who are not military in the army right now, because what's the difference between civilian and military? It's not only skills, but also the appropriate system of values and a picture of the world. Because many people who are fighting in this war for 10 months already, they have very good military skills, but they have not become professional military because the value system and the view of the world is different. Because that is usually being trained in 4 or 5 years in military training, and not even all of those who pass through that get that. So there are a lot of conflicts grounded in these issues. Life is a complex phenomenon. It's sometimes difficult to figure who is right, who is wrong, and what's sad is both sides have their truths, which are, to a degree, valid. And I'll try to pick very delicate words here. The number of cases when the servicemen do not fully understand what the war is and what the rules are in the military, and are trying to resolve their conflicts with the commanding officers in the same format as in the civilian world, without understanding the nature of war. The war is a horrible thing, and it's horrible in the fact that you can be ordered to go die, and you will go and die. People may sacrifice people for equipment. People may be sacrificed to save more people. Why military hate wars? Because it's dirty. It's beyond the usual framework what the normal human is capable of withstanding and confronting. Every decision tars you. Military decisions are dirty. They are based in deaths and losses, and that hits your psyche tremendously. Many people really suffer a lot of emotional issues just dealing with that. But army, as an organized group, has means to fight all that, to counter that. And army has discipline to do that. And discipline, even hard discipline, gives a systemic effect that precludes this organization from falling apart. Because after falling apart, it will usually becomes much worse. The problem just exacerbates. Today, when Zaluzhny was speaking, he said that when some soldiers really are upset with their commanding officers upon their decisions, or upon getting into conditions where they think life is impossible to continue, intolerable conditions, they sometimes leave these positions. And then, in order to stitch that defense, stitch that place that faltered, command has to bring their neighbors to fill these gaps and to try to rebuild everything. And if the enemy moved in, then we have a bad math. If 100 people retreated, then we likely will lose 300 dead and wounded trying to recapture that position. And when commanders look at this math, people who are pushing for this increased responsibility, it's not some civilians who pushed for that. This was the head of General Command, Sergei Sheptila, and of course, without the approval of the the top military leader, without the president, these decisions are not made. So this is an important decision to make about responsibility. And Zaluzhny did mention that there are two other important components to that decision, because first of all, lower commanding officers need more training so that soldiers fighting the war would believe in their command, would have faith in their command, and it's really the platoon leader, the company leader, who are instilling such faith in their people. We are sending soldiers to train how to use arms to Europe, but we also should be probably sending lower-ranking commanders there as well. And in my opinion, also some of the higher-level officers could definitely use some of that training. And, of course, also training for the troops themselves, because people need to know that they have enough capacity to win. And it's roughly 50% upon your success come from commanding officer, 50% or 45% from yourself, and 5% from your luck. And lower commanding officers definitely need to be better prepared. And if we're speaking in general, we need to change the character of traditional military machine that was existing in Ukraine. The other question is how easy it is to do during war. On the other hand, war is a very serious argument to conduct the reform, because Ukrainian military is to a big degree built upon the initiative from below, and this is already visible. In Prussian and German military, discipline was paramount, but they also had additional principle of free will of how to solve tasks. And they were favoring the troops who could make right decisions, even despite other decisions made by their commanding officers. And in the Academy of Ground Troops in Germany, there is a phrase that is actually put on a wall somewhere there. It is based on a historic event when Friedrich put one of the officers to take a certain position and use his cannon detachment to shoot at certain targets, and he was sent messengers several times during the warfare telling him to change position because the fight was raging and things were changing on the battlefront. And several times they came and told him to change and relocate to a different place. And every time the officer responded that, no, he won't. Then at the court, he basically countered the court action, court-martial, saying that King told me to stay in this position. I was fulfilling his order. I was standing on this position and doing the fight that as I was told. Some younger commanding officers were coming and telling me things, but I was honorably carrying out the duties and commands of our top leader. And the answer was at the court that His Majesty gave you the rank of major, so you would be able to make decisions which commands to execute and which to not execute. And this ability of making right decisions, even despite certain mistakes that could be made by a commanding officer above you if he failed to consider certain factors, that was paramount also. And by the way, why Marines were so successful, or why some of the German troops were so successful? They actually had a certain selection being done at the lower, constantly at the lower ranks. They would put you in a situation where you and your pal need to position over here, and they pointed at a place on the map. You'll be defending the river crossing, and you'll be doing it from here. Go there and do that, carry out the command. And so that soldier and his pal would go there happily and discover that, the visibility is poor in that place. And then the training officers were reviewing what would the soldier do. Those who stayed at this position, at the posted position, they were never promoted. The ones who changed their position to a better, those were the ones who got more attention, who were grown into commanding officers later. The one who changed tactics to achieve the goal. So those were promoted. And This is basically the prevailing element when you can flex in the ways to achieve the mission completion. Even in the Soviet army, there was a lot of struggle. There was a Kiev and Moscow schools. Moscow command was representing the school of Zhukov, where the soldier must be afraid of his own officers more than the enemy, and that's what pushes him to attack. And then there was Kievan school, which inspired officers and soldiers to be creative, to find interesting solutions on the front. And this essentially is the fight happening in the heads of soldiers and officers. Of course, there's got to be tough discipline. You need to increase responsibility for wrong decisions, but at the same time, commanders and troops need to be prepared. They need to be trained. They need to be, because command actually our bylaws do state that commander, upon giving an order, needs to provide enough means to carry out the order. Because, and that's what Zaluzhny said, because it is this law increases responsibility of officers as well. People decided that this is anti-soldier law. No, it is discipline for everybody, including Zaluzhny himself, who has a top leader of the country above him who can make judgment upon his actions. And that is an important factor, that each officer giving an order must also provide for enough means to carry out this order. So, in some parts we are evolving, but in some parts we still fight with the remnants of the Soviet Union. Here's a good example for you. Soldier's truth, it's a dominating thing in the media world today. How many movies in the Soviet Union were made about the destiny of officers? One. And how many movies about the generals? Just one. Yeah, there was one series about that. And that's it. Everything else was about soldiers. All the movies about lives of soldiers and their trials and tribulations. Same thing is in the Ukrainian society. We have a ton of mythology and stories around soldiers. There are ombudsmen trying to defend certain rights of soldiers. There are also legal consultants who have zero experience in military trying to pick up cases. So there was a lot of mess and infighting around some decisions and some situations on the front. So I do agree with a general statement of this new concept that discipline must be rough. At the same time, both sides, commanding and soldiers, need to be well trained and need to understand the rules. Especially when it's very scary. That's when discipline holds you, and the shoulder of your comrade, and a competent leader. And that's important. We need to keep growing commanders of all different levels, from lower level commanding officers in the trenches to commanders who can think in missions, in the concept of missions and tasks that need to be solved, who can think and be initiative and produce and show initiative. So the third is still somewhat of an issue. We're still training our officers. We're still growing them. We need to have more officers who are active, who are eager to look for enemy and destroy enemy and achieve tasks. And when they will be prevailing in our command chain, because very often we would have a platoon commander who is eager to carry out tasks and go search for the enemy, and then the company commander is already tired. He doesn't want to do much. And then there is a battalion, for example, commander who is decisive but not too bright. So these situations definitely brew conflict. That's why I hope we grow our new school of officers and commanding figures in the army. But the reality is simple as the baby's butt, although the military reality is kind of looking more like a brick. We are leading a war, we're conducting a war for survival of the nation. especially if you look at those plus 200,000 that are somewhere across the border prepping to come here and fight. And here, condition number one is strict discipline, because during the change of military model, during the change of any reform in the army, when you shed one skin and get another one, this is another crisis. So discipline needs to be hard. So first, strengthen discipline and then carry out all the other exercises. And that was a good first step. I agree. And this is not an anti-soldier law. Do not bring it as anti-soldier. It actually touches upon everybody, upon generals of the armies as well. It touches upon everybody. It relates to officers and commanding officers. It's not to give officers more rights to punish their soldiers. No, soldiers also fall upon the action under the effect of this law. And trust me, majors, they do fight with lieutenants. Colonels have issues with majors. And higher level commanders who are organizing bigger events, they will also be asked upon. So about 340,000 watching us live, 140,000 click the like button. I continue asking you to please share links to that stream on your social media, click the like buttons, and subscribe to Feigin Live and to Olexiy Arestovich channels. In the description to that video, you can find us, and of course subscribe to the Privateer station if you are listening or watching that in English. We've been live for about 45 minutes, and let's discuss one more news. European Union countries discussed the ceiling for Russian gas, natural gas, following the price of oil. That comes in action on the 15th of February. The price is 180 euros for 1 megawatt hour. At first, they talked about 175, and 12 countries disagreed on that. So Putin is promising to stop exporting natural gas. But overall, during the time of war, European countries paid over 191 billion euros for energy sources. Well, that's very simple, Mark. What money do you think they're buying for Iranian drones and other munitions? Of course, yeah, that money. Exactly. So the West is giving Putin money to reinforce his military. So understandably, you cannot cut it immediately, cut these ties, especially if energy is involved. But step by step, that needs to happen, and that noose on Putin's neck needs to get tighter and tighter. And if Putin says they'll fight till the last soldier, sure, we can provide for him to lose the last soldier here. But I hope Russians will understand that Putin is bringing them to a very deadly situation, and with the price they'll pay for that. Although I did look at the polling today coming out of Russia, 50 or 60% are still supporting mobilization and still express pretty dumb views. And as the authors of this study wrote, Russians are people with torn consciousness. And many people which were part of USSR, they have torn consciousness and conscience. And we in our country are stitching that up. We're figuring out our ways forward. But in Russia, they still play with that insanity. And the study already shows that a third of Russians already have friends, relatives, acquaintances who either died or was wounded in this war. A third. And we haven't even started full counteroffensive on the front. So I think when that situation gets higher to every second or every first, that's when situation will start changing. But at the same time, 70 or almost 80% supported Russia leaving Kherson. That's an interesting one. And there'll probably be 80% supporting leaving Crimea, leaving other parts, and will still say that they're supporting military operation, so-called, And when they'll be called, was it correct to leave Lugansk? 101% will say yes, it was right decision because every first will have relatives or friends who were lost in this war. I think they're just afraid to say the truth during polling.
Почти 50
We're
минут
almost
говорили,
50
50
minutes live,
минут, да,
49 minutes.
и
Tomorrow we have a stream, right?
я думаю, завтра
Yes.
еще будешь
Tomorrow I
смотреть
will be
его,
back
да?
home to my studio,
Да, я завтра уже возвращаюсь.
and I
Я
do
тебе
need to
скажу, что
answer
смущает
to people asking in chat. Alexei
то, что
Arestovich is
если
not
все
lying on the
понимание,
sofa.
он
He is
держит
holding a phone
телефон.
in his hand. He
Держит
is
просто
not
телефон, поэтому никуда он не
lying on the
денется.
sofa.
Не надо
Do
ничего
not
делать.
imagine things.
Потому что попробуй
Try
пройти
holding the
50
phone
минут,
for
и у тебя
50
кончится
minutes.
телефон. Это
Yeah, right. Bring me blanket.
я
I'm
лежу,
here
дайте
in my bed.
одеяло, принесите одеяло.
Okay, so
Вот, поэтому на всякий
tomorrow
случай. Во вторник
he will
завтра
not be laying in the sofa. He will be sitting pretty in a good
поэтому
chair.
технически
Okay,
ему не придется на весу держать телефон.
everybody,
Так
please
что
continue
я
subscribing,
прошу
continue
всех
sharing
оставить
links,
свои
clicking like
комментарии
button,
ваши, пожалуйста.
and we'll continue tomorrow and
Завтра увидимся
talk
и
about things we
договоримся,
didn't
что
talk about
поговорим
today.
сегодня, как мы
Goodbye. See you
договорились.
tomorrow,
Или
Alexei.
группу
I'll be
поговорим.
home too.
Ладно, тебе пока, завтра увидимся.
Good luck and
Доброго
thank you,
дня.
everybody. I'll lower my hand now.